Welcome to today's edition of Just the Truth. Glad to have you join me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio to lose weight for the last time in 2024. Visit myphdweightloss.com. According to a Fox News survey of Georgia registered voters that was released yesterday, former President Donald Trump leads Joe Biden with just over 50% support in Georgia, a state Biden won by less than 1 point in 2020. A ruling by the Oregon State Supreme Court says that 10 Republican senators in the state of Oregon cannot run for re-election. This is the left at its best. A column in Politico kind of sums up the upcoming South Carolina presidential primary. It's titled Lessons from South Carolina's Last GOP Primary Upset. And it's referring to the 2012 presidential primary. Do you remember who won that one? This is a little pop quiz for you. Put your thinking caps on. Who won the 2012 presidential primary? And it was an upset. You can't Google this. We'll get back to this in just a moment. Saying that we cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it, Washington, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb is getting heat from citizens he serves, suggesting that he has given up on curbing major crime in our nation's capital. Hope you joined today's conversation on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Send your comments to the Furman Ford text line. You can leave me a voice message on there, and your emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
On our guest line this morning, Senator Tim Scott.
Thank you for listening to one of the best radio shows. Joey, God bless your leadership.
Joey, congratulations on your new show.
I just wanted to let you know that I always appreciate your perspective and your common sense approach to the issues.
You know what? If people like you keep telling us the truth, believe me, we're paying close attention.
Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Let's start with some of the latest polling. President Donald Trump leads Joe Biden with just over 50% support in the state of Georgia. Remember, that was one of the most contentious states in the 2020 election, with Biden ending up winning with less than 1 point. Again, if you believe the results that came back in. This is according to a new Fox News survey. They talked with Georgia registered voters. It was released yesterday. And just over half of the Peach State voters, 51%, say they would support Trump in a hypothetical head-to-head rematch, while 43% say they'd go for Biden. That puts Trump ahead by 8 points outside of the poll's margin of error. 8 in 10 Georgians, 78%, say they're extremely or very interested in the race, and the vote breakdown among that subgroup is similar. 52% would go for Trump, 43% for Biden. That's a key measure, because when you have people who have a high interest in the election, they're more likely to vote, and their polling numbers are more dependable. Trump received strong support from his base, of course, including white evangelicals, 85% of those, 76% of those who identify as conservative, white voters without a college degree, 74%, the more outlying areas, the farmers, agricultural areas, 67%. For Biden, it's liberals, 87%, black voters, 71%, and voters with a college degree, 52%, and suburban women at 52% as well. Democrats and Republicans are equally likely to support their respective candidates in their party. That comes in around 91% of those who have declared a particular party, while independents are more likely to go for President Trump by 20 points. It also helps Trump that more Republicans than Democrats are interested in the election. Again, that excitement level, that increase in, yes, I'm interested in our country's future. This is interesting. Biden's taking a hit with younger voters as those under the age of 35 go for Donald Trump by a 7-point margin. You think Taylor Swift is losing her touch? You think the Swifties aren't coming in like they were expecting? A majority say that Joe Biden was legitimately elected in 2020, 60%, yet over 2 in 10, or 22% of that subgroup, would vote for Donald Trump in 2024, this November. About a third believe Biden's victory was suspect, and they overwhelmingly go for Trump in that case, 97% of those. Republican pollster Darren Schwalb, who conducted the poll for Fox News with Democrat Chris Anderson, says, given that the Democrats won major U.S. Senate races in 2020 and 2022, Trump's strength in the poll is somewhat surprising. He said, we can blather on correctly about how anything can happen, but the reality is Biden may want to shift his focus and precious resources away from Georgia and onto other potential battleground states such as North Carolina. Hey, I'm depending on you folks in the Tar Heel state to do well up there as well. In a potential five-way race, Trump still leads, but both the former president and Joe Biden would lose support to third-party candidates. Trump gets 45%, Biden drops to 37%. Other candidates receive a total of 12%, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with 8%, Cornel West with 3%, and Jill Stein, who I think runs every election year, 1%. The survey also tested another hypothetical five-way race, which substitutes Nikki Haley for Donald Trump. In this case, third-party candidates help Biden, and they hurt Haley. Biden comes out on top by 6 points with 35% among Georgians, followed by Haley at 29%, Kennedy at 18%, West at 3%, and Stein maintained her 1%. So where do Trump supporters go in this scenario? According to the poll, just 46% would back Nikki Haley, while 31% would vote third party. 6% wouldn't cast a ballot at all. They'd stay home. And 13% say they're still undecided. Haley gets just over 50% among registered Republicans, but nowhere near the 83% Trump gets in this five-way race. Think about that. That's a, what? Do my math here. That's 30 points, 31 points. Independents splinter when it comes to Nikki Haley. 20% backer, 22% would go for Biden, and a larger share, 30%, would go for RFK. Now, you compare those same numbers with Trump, he receives 34% of the independent Georgia voters versus 21% for Biden and 17% for Kennedy. Kennedy's coming on pretty strong to be a third-party candidate, independent. Now, as far as the issues, these can make a big difference, the economy is the top issue nationally, and it's no different in Georgia, with 44% say they feel that they're falling behind financially. 43% say they're holding steady, 12% say they're getting ahead. When asked the most important issue in deciding their vote come this November, 62% say the economy is extremely important, followed by election integrity, health care, and surprisingly, immigration and border security at 46%. Now, we saw that just a week or so ago in New Hampshire, that immigration and border security was top. It was the top issue, well ahead of even the economy. Some of the other issues, abortion comes in at 40%, while other issues fall under 30%, like the Israel-Hamas war, 28%, climate change, 27%, and the Ukraine-Russia war, just 23%. When you kind of compare some of those numbers with the issues and the candidate, Trump comes out on top on just about every single issue. More Georgia voters trust Donald Trump than Joe Biden to handle immigration and border security. They trust Trump to handle the economy. They trust Trump to come to a resolution with the Israel-Hamas conflict. They trust Trump to handle Ukraine-Russia. Surprisingly, voters are a bit split on health care, with Trump barely edging Biden out on that. Election integrity, just 1% say that Trump would do a better job. The pollster, Anderson, says the coalition that gave Biden a slim victory in 2020 is in need of reassembly, and that may be harder to do this time. On the crucial issues of the border and the economy, Georgia voters think Trump is significantly better. Biden will need to make inroads on these issues if he's going to win Georgia again. I don't see that happening. Do you? Another topic surrounding the presidential candidates is their mental acuity. More voters are very concerned about Joe Biden's mental soundness. 65% are concerned, with only 51% say they're concerned with Donald Trump. Biden's job ratings, kind of the same as his national ratings, which are deeply underwater. 41% approve, 58% disapprove in Georgia. Georgia voters are also ready for a change, a lot of it. Nearly 8 in 10 want either a lot of change, 50%, or radical change, 29% in the country, and how it's being run. Trump wins among those who want at least a lot of change, while Biden wins among the rest. The poll was conducted January 26th through the 30th. It was under the joint direction of Beacon Research and Schwalb & Company Research with Fox News, including interviews from a sample of just over 1,000 Georgia registered voters. Your thoughts? Send me a quick note on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-5639. Send me an email as well, joey@joeyhudson.com. So have you thought about my question earlier about who won the upset victory in 2012 in the primary? No cheating. Don't Google. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. So just when you thought the state of Oregon could not get any goofier, 10 Republican senators in Oregon are not going to be able to run for re-election according to the state's Supreme Court and a ruling issued just this week. I'll give you all the details in just a moment. Are you ready to lose that excess weight? Let me talk with you about emotional eating. You know, I used to be a chocoholic. I still love chocolate. But I've learned to not use it as a crutch to deal with stress and other things that are happening in my life. I changed my relationship with chocolate over 3 years ago after meeting Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. One of the hardest habits to break when you're losing weight is the emotional eating. You may get off of a tough phone call, or maybe you're in a boring meeting, or you can't walk by that vending machine, not because you're hungry, but because you're emotionally charged. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition and Dr. Ashley Lucas taught me that I can't just give up the afternoon for a chocolate fix, but I needed to find something to replace it. Otherwise, I was going to go back to my old habits. That's what I love about PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. It's not a fad diet. It's not even a diet at all. They talk with you about your relationship with food and changes that you can make that are going to allow you to keep that weight off for the rest of your life. I've been able to maintain my 30-pound weight loss for over 3 years now. You can too. Make that first call, 864-252-4925. You can visit them online at myphdweightloss.com. Call today. Set up your initial consultation, 864-252-4925. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. The Oregon Supreme Court found that the senators named this week, 10 Republican senators, will be banned from running for re-election under a constitutional amendment that was approved in 2022. It was because of ballot measure 113 states that the lawmakers who miss at least 10 legislative days without an excuse cannot seek re-election. The ruling upheld a decision from Oregon Secretary of State LaVon Griffin Valadez, who's a Democrat, by the way. Surprise, surprise. Ms. Griffin Valadez said in 2023 that the senators under the measure could not try for another term. At the time, she said, "My decision honors the voters' intent by enforcing the measure the way it was commonly understood when Oregonians added it to the state constitution." The decision has sparked a lawsuit from some of the Republican senators, but the Oregon Supreme Court sided with the Secretary of State, issuing their ruling saying because the text is capable of supporting the Secretary's interpretation and considering the clear import of the ballot title and explanatory statement in the case, we agree with the Secretary that voters would have understood the amendment to mean that a legislator with 10 or more unexcused absences during a legislative session would be disqualified from holding legislative office during the immediate next term rather than the term after that. Justices said that they used their typical methodology in construing the amendment by determining how the voters who adopted the amendment most likely understood its text. The ruling applies to 10 Republican senators in the 30-seat Oregon Senate. It's going to be a major blow for the GOP in Oregon. Ms. Griffin Valladay said, "I've said from the beginning my intention was to support the will of the voters. It was clear to me that voters intended for legislators with a certain number of absences in a legislative session to be immediately disqualified from seeking re-election. I'm thankful to the Oregon Supreme Court for providing clarity on how to implement Measure 119. The senators in question included State Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp, who missed more than 10 days in 2023. Now get this, and this applies to the majority of the 10. They were protesting Democrat bills on abortion and other issues, so they walked out with the intention of delaying a vote because it would prevent a quorum. This is a common legislative tactic. Unfortunately, I don't know if they just didn't understand what the amendment to the Constitution was, but it's going to cost them their seat. Mr. Knopp said this week, "We obviously disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling, but more importantly, we're deeply disturbed by the chilling impact this decision will have to crush dissent." The measure says that disqualification applies to the term following the election after the member's current term is completed. Mr. Knopp had challenged the interpretation of the measure in front of the court. During oral arguments before the Supreme Court, this was back in December, attorneys for the senators and the state wrestled over the grammar and the syntax of the language that was added to the state constitution, arguing that the senators argued that the voters did not intend that, the state arguing that that's exactly what the voters intended. Lawyers for the senators said that they viewed the measure language as meaning the lawmakers could run in 2024 since the senator's term ends in January, but not a term after that. The ballot said that the result of a vote in favor of the measure would disqualify legislators with 10 or more unexcused absences from holding office following the current term of office. The state argues that casting a yes vote in support of the measure, voters intended that legislators not be allowed to run. All parties in the suit had sought clarity on the issue. Mr. Knopp and 3 other Republican senators have already launched their re-election bids for this year as the case was considered. 2 other senators said they're retiring at the end of their terms. The remaining senators were elected in 2022, so their terms end in 2027. Wow. 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. The most common sense approach to fighting crime is to enforce the law, right? Arrest the perpetrators. Take them off the streets. Evidently not during a panel of Washington, D.C. residents who voiced their frustrations and demanded accountability from city leaders in addressing some of the violent crime that has taken over our nation's capital. D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb's response, he said, "We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it." You can't prosecute and arrest. So prosecuting criminals, arresting criminals, is not going to decrease crime? Think about that one for a moment while I tell you about Furman Ford. It's never been more important to support locally run businesses. If you're looking for a new vehicle, if you're looking for maybe a good pre-owned vehicle, if you need service on your existing vehicle, whether it's a Ford or not, and whether you bought it at Furman Ford, you're not going to have to wait weeks or maybe even months to get it in the service, because Furman Ford, they do business the right way. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line. That means when you stop in or you give them a call or you send them an email, you're going to always have access to a member of the Furman family, either Matthew Furman or Jim Furman. They'll help you navigate some of the great deals they have on a big selection of pre-owned and new vehicles. And what's even better, when you drive your vehicle off the lot, you know that your money is staying right there, right in the upstate community. Let me encourage you to visit my friends at Furman Ford in Lawrence. Find them online at FurmanFord.com, FurmanFord.com. Here's the story. Washington, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb has infuriated residents after claiming that the city's rampant crime crisis cannot be dealt with through law and order. Angry residents met with community leaders in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday of this week. They were having a panel to discuss the rise of violent crime in the city, specifically among juveniles, when Schwalb made the controversial comment that has since gone viral. As residents voiced their concerns and frustrations, the Democrats suggested that if district residents want to be, quote, safe in the long run, they must take preventative measures rather than arrest and prosecute the violent criminals. In a viral clip on Fox 5 there in Washington, D.C., here's what Schwalb said.
During the discussion, residents did not hold back, voicing their frustrations.
I blame the system.
Many questioning why kids aren't being held accountable.
We as a city and a community need to be much more focused on prevention and surrounding young people and their families with resources if we want to be safer in the long run. We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it.
We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it. You can imagine some of the response. Representative Dan Bishop from North Carolina wrote on X, "Madness. D.C. is emblematic of the pro-crime policies leftists want to export to the rest of the country." The Republican House Judiciary Committee also posted in response to some of the recent statistics that reveal robberies in D.C. are up 11% just this year alone, saying, yes, you can. Will Reinhart, National Press Secretary for the National Republican Congressional Committee, wrote that Schwab's comments was beyond parody. Conservative commentator, podcaster Mary Catherine Ham wrote in a repost of the video, "I would suggest you try prosecuting and arresting your way out of this." Abigail Jackson, communications director for Senator Josh Hawley, responding to Schwab's claim, saying, yes, you can. Gabriel Rubenstein, a spokesperson for the D.C. Attorney General's office, told Fox News Digital that Schwab was laser-focused on making D.C. safer, saying the Office of the Attorney General is laser-focused on using the law to make D.C. safer. This includes prosecuting juveniles and holding them accountable when they commit crimes, which we do for every serious offense where there's sufficient evidence to prove a case. Tuesday's panel, named Understanding Juvenile Carjacking, a panel discussion, was moderated by Council Member Charles Allen, who's facing a recall effort amid the rise in the violent crime in Washington, D.C., his city. Okay, so have you thought about who won the upset victory in the first in the South primary in 2012? That's coming up. Text your comments to the Furman 4 text line, 864-477-5639. Speaking of the Furman 4 text line, Faye says, you know, Joey, Tricky Nikki is saying everything she knows Trump supporters want to hear, but if she got to the big house, she would deny every word. What a fraud. Of course she would fit in with those in D.C. God bless America, and folks read Psalms 109. I'll do that, Faye. Tony says, Joey, I've told you many times, me and JR, we have a lot in common. His dislike for the quitter like me made me smile. Keep on trucking, JR. Thank you, Joey, for keeping us informed. He's referencing JR from Westminster, who had left a message, I think it was in yesterday's episode. If you missed it, go back and listen. JR basically doesn't quite trust Nikki Haley. Christy says, so much to say. Cruz and Zuckerberg piece was very eye-opening, but we've known they're pushing pedo material for years. These social media outlets are the business of destroying America one click at a time. She's talking about a segment that I included yesterday on Senator Ted Cruz grilling Mark Zuckerberg about some of the porn and letting pedophiles have access to young people on some of his social media platforms. She goes on to write, the subsidized electric vehicle chargers in the wealthy communities is just another misuse of tax dollars. I bet in the future, when we're all forced into this lunacy, those chargers will work great and never fail, where the rest of us will be subject to brown and blackouts to keep us in our places. The wealthy is counting on this corrupt government to keep us down, working, paying way too many taxes to fund these little for the underprivileged communities game, quote. Big Brother has become a dangerous monster. Also writing on the Furman Ford text line, Jeff says, this is so scary, and it just blows my mind that the government allows this, S-H-I-T, to happen. Excuse my language, he says. We got to protect our children. Again, talking about Zuckerberg and Instagram and some of the information that they have on there protecting pedophiles. If you missed that, you need to really go back to yesterday's episode. I think it would be, I think it's episode 71 maybe, and listen to the exchange between Senator Ted Cruz this week and Mark Zuckerberg about the access that pedophiles have on Instagram. Texter says, sweet, now that Martha's Vineyard is considered low income for EV charging subsidies, maybe we can build some low-income housing complexes right on the doors of the Kennedys and Obamas. Maybe they can open a soup kitchen and do some good for the underserved people instead of jet-setting around the country lecturing us. Scott in Toccoa. Good morning, Joey. Just finished listening to your podcast about subsidized charging stations. While you mentioned Teslas and the wealthy, I believe that there's more to it than just Teslas and catering to the wealthy. Been hearing rumors that China will begin to flood the market with low-price electric cars in the next few years. It's interesting to theorize a handshake deal with China to push the conversion to total electric. Looking forward to your thoughts on this. Scott, I think you're dead on it, buddy. Look, and as I wrote back to you, John Podesta, if you haven't heard, and you remember John Podesta, he's the political operative who put the Clintons in power. He is going to be taking John Kerry's place as Biden's climate guru, or whatever it is he called John Kerry. And one of the first deals he's already talked about is going to China. The Biden administration is in bed with China. But it's not just the Biden administration. There are other, there's even some Republicans who want to get the approval of China because they want their money. China is buying our country bit by bit. And by the way, if you missed what we're talking about here, this was a story of where the Biden administration is subsidizing the installation of electric vehicle chargers. And in order to be able to be eligible for these subsidies, it has to be a low-income area. Well, we all know that low-income areas don't have a lot of electric vehicles because they're so expensive. So the Biden administration has come up with this convoluted formula that some of the most wealthy places in the United States, like Martha's Vineyard, like the Upper East Side of New York City, and Montauk in Long Island, one of the wealthiest places in the Northeast, Rhode Island, some of these communities that are very, very wealthy somehow have landed on Joe Biden's low-income list, and so they're qualifying for federal subsidies for electric vehicle charging stations. Texter says, good morning, Joey. Just can't keep quiet on the arrogance of Biden and his government. They're placing sanctions on Israeli citizens for things done in Israel. They're talking about the two-state solution in Israel. Who do they think they are that they can dictate to a sovereign nation? We have too many problems, many created by them in this country, to be trying to solve problems in another country. I hate to say it, but Joe Biden is president of the USA, not the world. When we as a nation are perfect, then maybe we can suggest solutions to others. In the meantime, November and Trump 47 cannot come too soon. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line as well. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. I love to get your comments, please. Leave me a quick voice message as well. Chris writes, this doesn't really have anything to do with what you normally talk about each morning, but I'd like to get your thoughts on something I heard this morning on the news. I'm hearing here that in South Carolina, they want to push a new bill that would make anyone choosing to become a permanent resident here would have to pay a one-time fee of $300. They say this will help with all the infrastructure maintenance. Do you feel this would be a good or bad thing? Just curious to hear your thoughts on this. Now, this is interesting, Chris, and I haven't heard about it. But I'm going to talk to some of our legislative friends, maybe Representative John McCravey or maybe Representative Stuart Jones or somebody, Thomas Beach, my buddy Mike Burns. I'm going to talk with some of them and see what this is. Until I know that, Chris, I don't really have an opinion yet. It is kind of interesting. Next thing you know, they'll have an exam to enter South Carolina. That may not be such a bad idea after all. Our text of encouragement today, and this is a good one. A successful man is one who can lay a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at him. God bless. That's a good message, isn't it? Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. From the email inbox, I couldn't pass this one up. I had to share this one with you because it's from Uncle Joe Biden. He sent me an email. It goes like this. Joey, I know this message is long, but I hope you'll take a moment to read it and be reminded of all the things we have been able to accomplish because of our victory in 2020. When Kamala and I were sworn in over 2 years ago, the economy was on its back. Schools and businesses were closed. People were hurting, and far too many were mourning the loss of a loved one to COVID. Kamala and I agreed that we couldn't just rebuild the economy as it was before. We needed to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. So we got right to work, and we passed the American Rescue Plan. Today, our economy has recovered faster and stronger than any other developed country in the world, he says. We've created more jobs in 2 years than any president in a 4-year term, and the unemployment rate is near record lows. Uncle Joe goes on to write, and we didn't stop there. We kept working to make progress on the issues that matter. We passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, kicking off a decade of rebuilding our country's roads, bridges, highways, ports, internet, and railroads, he says. We passed the most significant gun safety legislation in over 3 decades. We took on Big Pharma, and we won, he writes, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Now the biggest insulin manufacturers are lowering the costs for everyone. He says we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is bringing down costs for working people and is the largest investment to combat climate change in U.S. history, because I believe building a clean energy future starts in America. Uncle Joe goes on to write, when I look back at all the things we've accomplished together, I feel proud, and I'm reminded that there's so much more work to be done. I know I don't need to remind you what's at stake in this election. The MAGA Republicans in this race want to drag us backwards, he writes. When they look at America, all they can see is carnage, darkness, and despair. They spread fear and lies for profit and power. When Kamala and I take a look at America, we see possibility. If you're with Kamala and me in this fight, can you pitch in a donation of $25? You knew that one was coming, didn't you? Grassroots contributions from supporters like you are laying the strong foundation that we need to win in 2024. If the last 2 years show you anything, it's that there's not a single thing beyond our capacity if we do it together. I'm proud to have you in my corner. Thank you, Joe Biden. I think I got on the wrong list, didn't I? And that's the problem. He believes all that crap. Joe Biden and the Democrats believe that they have done all this. I mean, they talk about the building back the economy. faster than anything? Well, we were in the middle of a pandemic when you were inaugurated there, Mr. President. A lot of people were out of jobs because businesses had closed because of COVID. And because your Democrat-controlled cities had taken drastic measures and had forced businesses to close. So you want to brag about rebuilding the economy? And you want to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law? You want to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act? And in the same sentence, you admit that it's that it's an investment to combat climate change? What in the thunder does the Inflation Reduction have to do with climate change? So my question to you is, should I click on the spam button? Should I block him from sending me future emails? Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-5639. So have you thought about my question from earlier? Who won the upset victory in 2012's primary? While you're thinking about that one last time, are you looking for a new appliance? Did you wake up this morning and you opened the refrigerator and the light didn't come on and you knew something was bad wrong, didn't you? You knew it was time for a new refrigerator. So you went to one of the big box stores and they couldn't help you at all because they know nothing about appliances. All they know is they have a long row of refrigerators, but they can't help you with the different features and the things that are important in a new refrigerator or a washer and dryer or maybe a dishwasher. Fortunately, when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, there's never any shipping or supply issues. They have over 1,500 appliances. They're in stock, ready for you to buy today, in a lot of cases, use today. 11,000 square feet, slam full of appliances waiting for you. And they have expert installation, award-winning service, and their extended warranties are bar none. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they have you covered well after the sale. That's because you're more than just a credit card swipe to Jeff and his team at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. Check them out today. Take the short drive to Pickens or find them online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. So this is from Politico. It's a column that they published last night actually. It says, not Newt. And to answer the question that I've been asking you, who won the upset victory in the first in the South primary in 2012? It was Newt Gingrich. So the column goes like this. It sounds like Nikki Haley is wish casting the scenario on the heels of consecutive double-digit losses in Iowa, New Hampshire, and amid serious doubts about the prospect of knocking off the frontrunner, a Southern-based candidate barnstorms South Carolina and pulls off an upset that resets the Republican presidential primary. It writes, but it's no fantasy. It's the story of Newt Gingrich's 2012 campaign, where the former House Speaker shook up the GOP nomination fight that year with a decisive win in the first primary in the South. That outcome offers a read of hope for the Haley campaign in the run-up to February 24th. The trouble is, veterans of the Gingrich effort are convinced she can't replicate the feat. Adam Waldeck, who served as the South Carolina director for Gingrich in 2012, but isn't affiliated with the candidate this year, says Nikki Haley is not Newt and Donald Trump is not 2012's GOP nominee Mitt Romney. And by the way, I know Adam Waldeck. I haven't talked to him in years, but I remember that very vividly because I was involved in that. I was broadcasting then. We did the Mike Gallagher show several times at different stops along with Newt Gingrich. The Politico writes, there's a connective tissue between Newt's candidacy in 2012 and Trump's in 2016. I would be willing to bet you that of the people who were working for our campaign, I would be shocked if anything less than 85% are Trump people. Now, this is Adam Waldeck talking. The two keys to Gingrich's come from behind victory: strong debate performances against more moderate rivals and an activist-driven ground game. Aren't in the cards for Haley say the former campaign officials. Trump is refusing to go on the debate stage. The legions of Tea Party activists who supported Gingrich have turned their back on Haley. Instead, that energy is now firmly in Trump's corner. I think Nikki is a great candidate, but Trump just has such a strong hold in South Carolina. Leslie Craven, a deputy state director for Gingrich in 2012, said, she's a great debater, but she won't be able to debate with Trump. I knew or know Leslie Craven as well. She's very instrumental in Newt's upset victory there. At the moment, Politico says, Haley faces a far greater polling deficit than Gingrich did, with the latest Washington Post Monmouth University poll showing her trailing Trump by 26 points. She's also got an uphill battle to win support from the Tea Party activists who helped power her 2010 election as governor and fueled Gingrich's victory 2 years later. Jerry McDaniel, who helped organize the Myrtle Beach Tea Party in 2009 and backed Haley in 2010, said grassroots activists have lined up behind Trump this year. McDaniel points to Haley's endorsement of Romney over Gingrich as the source of a rift between her and the Tea Party activists who had supported her initial run for governor. He said, we got her elected and she walked away from the grassroots, who served as Trump's South Carolina director, this is McDaniel, in 2016 and remains a Trump supporter, saying that was a slap in the face. Haley's support for Florida Senator Marco Rubio over Trump in 2016's primary is also a sticking point for some activists. Alan Olson, a former Tea Party leader in Columbia who supports Trump, saying, I was one of the first to jump on her bandwagon. She has completely abandoned us. If you live down here in South Carolina, the polls alone will show where the Tea Party energy is. Nikki Haley said we need to ignore the loudest voices. He added, referring to a dig she made at Trump's expense in 2016, and that rubbed me the wrong way, he said. At a board of directors meeting for the South Carolina Federation of Republican Women last weekend, a good proxy for Republican activists across the state, a straw poll showed overwhelming support for Donald Trump. Of 83 votes cast, 79 were for Trump, while only 3 for Haley and 1 for former candidate Ron DeSantis, according to Debbie Spa, the group's president. Spa said that the Republican women leaders across the state attended this session. Chip Felkel, a South Carolina political consultant who's unaffiliated with any campaign in the primary, said, Haley's problem is that they've painted her as an establishment candidate. Gingrich was always an insurgent, and those people have filed up behind Trump. Felkel and others agree that without any debates, which have boosted Haley's fortune so far and had an effect for Gingrich in 2012, it will be difficult for Haley to change the dynamics of the race. The only advice Waldeck could offer the Haley campaign, tongue-in-cheek, he said, I will say that perhaps she ought to see if Mitt Romney will return her last-minute endorsement of him and see how well that plays for her in South Carolina. And that was quite the year. I remember it well because I was right in the middle of it. When Newt Gingrich made the surprise win in South Carolina, Gallagher and I picked up and we headed to Florida with him because Florida, of course, was part of the next big round, Super Tuesday. We managed to catch a ride on a chartered plane with Gingrich, crisscrossing Florida. He eventually lost big time, and ended up, of course, getting out of the race. And unfortunately, Mitt Romney won it, and the rest is history. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio to lose weight for the last time, and I promise you, it will be the last time you'll be able to keep it off. Visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Just search for Joey Hudson or send me a quick text, and I'll send you a link to my YouTube channel. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your time with me. Keep those comments coming on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639, and your emails are welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. We're back again on Monday Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And remember, folks, God's got this. He's still in control.